What's up guys, Americano back here with another video. In this one, we're going to get into this week's Ethereum updates, as well as review an altcoin market that looks extremely strong in my opinion. So let's go ahead and get into the video. First up guys, we do have Ethereum on chart. Two charts I want to take a look at, or two time frames I want to take a look at, the 5-day and the weekly. Not the strongest close. I'll just move some of this off here real quick. If this is y'all's first time tuning into the channel, you should know that I'm operating with a bias that we are moving out of some sort of oversold level, even on the higher time frames like the weekly. So now that I am seeing more and more confirmation of this, even down to the 5-day time frame, it's making me extremely bullish on the future of Ethereum and altcoins in general. All right, guys, now we can go ahead and take a look at the 5-day time frame. Looks a lot different in here just because when these closes happened, which is why I kind of added in this additional upper line up here, but it doesn't really need to be there. We just kind of know this is an important level that we need to flip at that $2,400 level, whether that be 5-day, 3-day, weekly time frame. Getting above this level and maintaining is going to be key. Now I mentioned momentum building on the 5-day time frame as well. Still operating like we're moving out of these oversold levels, though we did not get quite as oversold like we did back in April of 2025. But nonetheless, we do see that we are starting to build some momentum to the upside. Now I want to point out something about this momentum indicator specifically. Let's just quickly review a few other times we have moved out of these oversold levels and started to see momentum build on the higher time frames. Sorry guys, I said there's a few things you should know. When this thing typically does start moving in one direction, it's very hard to get it to flip back. It's not something like a MACD that's going to sit there and bounce around. Once this thing does start moving rapidly in a single direction, it typically does stay that way for a period of time, right? Even if it does have to pause out in here, you can see that it doesn't have the same type of velocity like a move in here would, where you can see it then goes and goes in for that cross into negative momentum. Okay, now with that in mind, let's take a look, like I said, at all the times we have moved out of oversold and started to see this rising momentum, okay? So I'm going to go ahead and mark this on the chart in here, just in general. I suppose, for this sake, even though these weren't oversold levels, we did find a bottom in here. Actually, I don't want to use those. I just want to use these oversold levels. Now, we didn't quite get to oversold levels in here. When we look around the market, when we look at our composite indexes, everything was pointing to being oversold on weekly, 5-day, monthly, the same as any bear market. So I'm going to go ahead and use this in here as well. So now that we know the general times that we are supposed to be looking at, let's look at the day or the 5-day close that kicked off our momentum in the other direction. Okay, so for this little range in here, for this little segment in here, it's going to be that candle close right there. It could be this candle close right here, and then potentially this candle close, or I guess it'd actually be right there. Now, what does that look like on chart? All right, I don't even want to focus on the exact price action per se, because every phase of a cycle is going to be a different length and time. Everything is going to be subjective to the overall momentum in broader markets, how quickly things are moving to determine what kind of move that it's going to get. Even in here, right, we had like FTX collapse into that move. So things are always going to be different. What I want to focus on is, was there a new low? Had the low already been put in when these similarities showed up? And the answer to that question is yes. So I'm not saying it's instant resolve to the upside. Look at my 100% hit rate indicator. It's so perfect. It times everything perfectly. That's not the case. But I do want to point out that by the time this showed up in mid 2022, the low had already been put in. When this had showed up, or by the time this had showed up in April of 2025, the low had already been put in. Now, for a third time within the same range on Ethereum, is it possible that by the time this showed up, the low had already been put in? I see it as extremely possible. All right, guys, so we have gone on longer than I wanted to, but I also wanted to talk about altcoins in this video. So let's pop over to the others price chart. I'm gonna go ahead and look at the higher time frames like the weekly and the monthly. I'll go ahead and start on the monthly time frame right here, because I see a lot of people posting, this others price chart like it's extremely bearish, massive arrows. Right here, you'll see stuff being drawn like this, like look, we're in a breakdown. Look at this right here. Not even looking at the same oversold levels that we've been talking about. Like I said, it's showing up across the entire market. I've been mentioning it. But without even showing that, just using simple supply and demand, this chart does not look as bad as people think, in my opinion. When we look on the weekly time frame, same thing showing up, same reasoning as well, moving out of oversold levels, momentum building. I can show you the same exact examples that we just did on Ethereum. This is our monthly little support zone that we have in here, and you can see holding up really nicely even when we look at the weekly time frame. But there's obviously a lot of sellers being absorbed into here with, I don't want to say whales, but strong buyers. All right, now I want to cover one more chart, and I covered this in a video last week. This is my breadth momentum indicator. Real quickly on here, I'm just going to throw up a couple of these key crosses that I've been talking about. That's referring to the cross on the weekly time frame with our little EMA down here. All right, guys, so here is all the examples we have, and this is put up on the others price chart. Just to review it really quickly, again, you guys can go back to that video last week if you have more questions about it. Resolved to the upside, massive upside here. This move in here, not quite the same amount of upside, but low was already put in. We talked about this in last week's video. If you guys did not know, the low of the altcoin market in 2020 actually came in right here. And on this move with COVID in 2020, there was actually a lot of double bottoms out of the altcoin market. So while others is showing a new low on here, a lot of those major altcoins went in for double bottoms, or obviously their final capitulation with the COVID Black Swan event, but did end up resolving to the upside as well. Similar situation in here where a lot of altcoins bottoms. We were just looking at the Ethereum chart. I kind of mentioned it in there. Ethereum bottomed in there. XRP bottomed in here. Link. I don't believe Cardano. Dogecoin. So a lot of bottoms coming in here. And then our other example as well, or our previous last example, November of 2023. Obviously, nice little move out of the altcoin market in that time. And with this weekly close, we just confirmed another cross. Now, again, like I mentioned in this video as well, these things aren't perfect. They're not meant to perfectly time entries on individual coins. But when we add it in, when we layer it into our overall thesis, it holds a lot more weight than just standing alone looking at past examples. And I'm not going to cover it in this video. I'm not really ever going to cover it on YouTube at all, looking at individual coins. When we take a look at these same indicators, when we take a look at where price is at structurally, when we layer in the fact that Ethereum could be looking for a bottom, when we talk about getting this cross on my breadth momentum indicator, it makes me think this is only going to work out one way. Massive upside from the altcoin market in 2026. Make sure you guys sign up for my free newsletter. The link for that is in my bio. I'll catch you guys in the next one. Peace.